So we're going to jump right into the market update, share with you a little bit about where the market is and even where it was last year. So this was last month versus last month last year. So this is a year over year, month over month. On this other side, sorry, the camera's trying to find me. On the other side, what it is the 2023 performance versus 2025 performance. And what you see here is, in summary, a lot of flat. And ask any realtor and they'll tell you they were selling houses hand over fist in 2020, 21, 22, and then something changed, right? So something changed, and it was that we grew in price probably a little too rapidly. And of course, interest rates doubled basically over about a 6-month period and have stayed close to that doubled rate. So right now we're around 6% on the typical 30-year mortgage rate. And, at one point you're seeing people getting interest rates that were 2 and 3%. So that's one of the reasons why we've seen a little bit of a reduction there. I'm going to break down the market update into Texas overall. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into what it looks like for the major cities as well. So as we just jump in and look at the market overall for Texas, sales were kind of a mixed bag in terms of average price up, median price down, but both cases only about 1%. Days on market, 70 days on market, which is actually pretty normal for a real estate market. It feels like we're walking in molasses or quicksand, right? It feels like, will this thing ever sell? I've had a lot of real estate investors that are friends of mine, and some of them started investing around 2019. So like I've had some of them call me in 2024, like having an existential crisis about their, the property that they just fixed and flipped. And, it's like, well, when is it going to sell? I'm like, well, how long has it been on the market? And they're like, oh, it's been on the market a whole 2 weeks. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Just take a chill and relax. But if it was on the market for 2 weeks in 2021, there was a problem, right? Because it was properties were selling so quickly. Pending sales about flat versus where we were last year. Closed sales about flat, just up about 0.7%. And then if we jump into some of the other markets, I know we're in Austin right now, but if we jump into the DFW market, you can see that their average and median price down. They're selling their houses faster than the Texas average at 64 days. But when it comes to the average or last month's sales, it was up 1%. DFW has some of the lowest months of inventory right now at 4.4 months of inventory versus 4 last year. And then when you look at pending sales, as well, they're down about 6%. Pending sales are our closest leading indicator to what closed sales will be next month. Now, it's directional, but it's not always 100% accurate. So I've seen situations where it said it was going to be up 6%, and then it turned up being up 1%, or down 6%, and it turned up being up 1%. So it's directional, but it's not always perfect. Also have the number of properties that are going for lease now as well. And then when you look at the Houston market has been one of the strongest markets in closed sales, as well as pending sales up 13%. A little kind of up and down when it comes to the average and median price. So that's something that we're seeing pretty common, where the average is going up. So the more expensive houses are kind of pulling up the curve, right? For, to account for some of the lower price houses that are not selling right now, or not selling at that same rate right now. 59 days on market, which is really fast. Still not as fast as where we were the same time last year. And then lease listings up 5%, lease price flat at 2,300. And the number of active listings, we've seen this number be up 100% in Austin, because at one time we had about 2,000 listings on the market and we were selling over 2,000 houses a month. It was insane. We were about 2 months supply of inventory in this market. I'll jump into San Antonio and then I'll end with Austin just so you can get an idea. San Antonio is the market that is being hit the hardest. Anybody here from San Antonio, or anybody doing investing in San Antonio? You are. So that market, I was reading an article yesterday that like 22% of their contracts failed. So they canceled during their option period, which is probably about double of what it should normally be. But you're seeing more and more of that happening. More than ever. Well, I mean, it does feel very much like 2008, 9, 10, 11. How long have you been a realtor? I'm curious. 2012. So January of 2012 was when this Austin market started to turn around. So, but we're seeing, as you know, in a similar range of the number of withdrawn and expired properties on the MLS. So more properties are leaving the MLS in an unsold status. I was funny because I was looking at where, how much this market is like what the Great Recession was, 2008 through kind of 2011, beginning of 2012. It was from the peak to the trough in terms of the sales volume. There was a 90,000 unit difference from the peak to the trough during the Great Recession. From our peak in, let's say 2021 to where we are right now, it's about a 60,000 unit. This is for all of Texas, not just Austin, but it is about a 60,000 unit delta. If you look at our pending sales and our closed sales, we're back to numbers that we haven't seen since 2012, which is mind-blowing, right? It's almost like somebody came to Austin and just turned off the spigot, right? It is a very strange, houses are still selling. They're just not selling anywhere near the rate that, they had been. A lot of my rental properties, a lot of those prices, before I was like, wow, this property jumped up to $500,000. This is pretty phenomenal, right? And then you see there's been some changes, right? So it's something that we're always watching. So we have to be students of the market to make sure that when we're making an investment, we don't get in a position where we're losing money. So for the San Antonio market, which I said it was the market that was hit the worst, sales were down 11% last month. That's pretty wild. And pending sales in San Antonio down 14%. That's this number at the top that gets a little bit cut off right there. But pending sales down 14%. The San Antonio market is being hit the hardest by far. I'll jump into Austin because I know that's what most of you guys are here for. Austin did really well in terms of both the average and the median price last month. Austin, I feel like, hit its bottom maybe about 3 to 6 months ago, and now we're just kind of bumping along the bottom. The sales still down. They're down about 2% from where we were the same time last year. Pending sales, they are up, but they're only up by about 80 sales. So basically, again, flat. When we're in a market like what we're in now, if it's flat, it's like orange is the new black and flat is the new up, right? It's good to be flat. So for those of you guys who are moving here, new here, right? There's also some buying opportunities for you. And I will tell you, one thing that I have not said in probably 13 years, I'm going to say it right now, which is there are now some, not a lot, but some deals on the MLS. Normally, like in 2020, 2021, 2022, there were no deals on the MLS. Everything was just selling, sight unseen, above list price, multiple offers. The first day it was listed, right? So it was insanity. No deals to be had. Right now, there are more deals than I've seen in a long time to be had on the MLS. And you can have your realtor do a search for you. So we can save searches for our clients. And one of the searches that you can ask your realtor to do is search for the word motivated and send me every single listing that has the word motivated in it. Send me every single listing that says investor special. Send me every single listing that says make offer. Send me every single listing that says owner finance or investor special. We're looking for those types of remarks to say the patient is dying and they need an investor to fix them, right? So that's one of the things that we can look for there. Because remember, So there are opportunities on the MLS, and then there are also opportunities for the properties that are going off of the MLS, but not going off of the MLS in a sold status, which means they're being withdrawn, or they're more typically being expired off of the MLS. So now, I don't want you to be a lazy investor and just say, I'm just going to call a realtor and find, no, you got to also do your own marketing, because the best deals will come from your own marketing. The deals that you'll find on the MLS, typically you're going to overpay for, and the amount by which you'll overpay for might be roughly all of your profit, right? So a good deal to a typical realtor is, well, you got 5% off, you got 10% off, you got a steal of a deal. But is 10% of a discount enough for us as a person who's going to buy it, pay closing costs when we buy, and then hold it and pay holding cost all the way through, and then to resell it and pay all the closing costs all over again? It's like, no. And that's why we use that 70% of ARV minus repairs formula. If you use that formula, you're not making a 30% profit off of the ARV. You're really only making about a 15% profit off of the ARV, and maybe 10, depending on what your cost of capital is. So if you're working with a hard money lender who's charging you 15% interest, you're probably only going to make about 10%. If you have like all of your own money in the deal, and you not paying any cost of capital, then you might be making 15 to 18% of that. So something to be aware of when you are looking at those opportunities. They all have to pass, the sniff test. I was just speaking with an investor here, and he told me, gave me some numbers on a property that he bought, and I'm like, you overpaid by $50,000. And he's like, yeah, I know I overpaid. And I'm like, you're going to lose money on this deal. He's like, no, I don't think I'm going to lose money. And we start going through my calculator, and which is it's a simplification to say 70% of ARV minus repairs, but it's highly directional. And what he told me, that the reason why he could make this work, he bought it at basically 85% of ARV, which is, he gave away all of his profit. But the way he fought for it back was he used his own capital. So he didn't have any charge for private money lending, no charge for hard money lending. So he used all of his own funds. And the other thing is, he was also a realtor. So he got to save a 3% realtor fee on it. I'm like, it's only because of these things. And I walked him through the calculations of how it would look if you did have to pay a lender, or how it would look if you did have to pay a realtor. Because I'll hear some investors say, well, this deal doesn't work if I have to pay, cost of capital. It's like, then your deal's too lean. You got to go renegotiate your deal. Otherwise, if something goes wrong, as a new investor, and I'm like, well, he told me he spent $30,000 on it. And I'm like, well, what was your budget? And he's like, well, 20. And I'm like, that's not atypical to overspend by 50%. And I'm like, well, did you fix the foundation? He's like, no, I had the foundation checked. It was fine. I'm like, well, how old was the house? So it was built in the 70s. I'm like, well, did you check the plumbing underneath the slab? So that's one thing that a lot of good realtors will tell their buyers to go and do on these houses that were built, before 1980. Just say, hey, make sure that there's no cracks in the pipes. So you don't have to go jackhammering through your house if something, if the water's not holding. So there's a test for that. And he's like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And then the other thing is, if you're using your own money, I'm sorry, but not any one of you in the room, including me combined, have enough money to be a real estate investor. There's always going to be more deals. So you need to figure out how to raise capital to be able to scale your business beyond just one. So on that deal, as we went through the numbers, I'm like, you're going to make $11,000. He's like, yeah, I guess that sounds right. And I'm like, was it worth the, 6 months that you put in? And it's like, and it kind of gave me this look. I'm like, listen, you either learn or you earn. Ideally, you're not spending much time learning. You're learning from working with other people and walking side by side with other people who've already done it, so that you don't have to spend all your time learning. Because what I found out about real estate is what you learn from getting your own experience on deal number one, you may not have that same experience until deal number 121. But in that time period, you're going to have another 120 other experiences that you will learn from. So learn from other experts who have been doing it for a while. Success leaves clues, but wouldn't y'all rather walk in the footsteps of somebody who's been where you ultimately want to go? So this is the Austin market update. I know it's been flashing over here. What else did I want to point out on this? I think probably one of the most interesting things, and it's going to pop up in the next couple of seconds, is the jump we had in 2020 versus 2021 in the average price, 29%. Insane. Now, we've given, if you look at the bottom part here, down in 23, 8%, down in 24, 1%. Probably going to be about flat to up 1% as we finish this year. We got one more month to go. Now, we have seen more mortgage applications. So every time they lower the interest rates, more mortgage applications. In fact, I did a verification of employment for one of my employees this past week. And I'm like, hey, what were the terms on your loan? He's like, I took my interest rate down 2%. 2% on a $300,000 house, that's like $400 a month. It's like almost $5,000 a year. So it was worth it for him to, pay probably the $5,000 he had to pay to get title insurance and do all the refinancing. But it'll pay off. Usually you're looking for opportunities where the refinance pays off in a period of, a year or so. I've got some of the different market drivers where we look at what's driving the market where we are right now. Consumer confidence, they say anything above 100 is good. Solid. We've been as high as 130 and 2021, 2022. Right now we are at 89. That was the number for October. And you can see it's kind of been dropping a little bit. Consumer confidence is just your confidence in taking your wallet out and purchasing something, right? When we're not very confident, we're like, I think I just kind of kick the can a little bit, just kind of see what happens. On low expenses, you're still going to do stuff, but on the high stuff, you're going to say, let me just make sure that I'm good here. Make sure I'm in a good financial position. Unemployment rate is still very solid, although you keep hearing about Amazon and Facebook and UPS and company after company that are firing, not like 100 people, but like 15,000 people. And, even Tesla laid off, I want to say like 3,000 people about 9 months ago, something like that. But unemployment is still really high. Now, I do hear that young college graduates are really struggling to find work right now because a lot of the entry-level stuff is going away. So this is a great place to be if you are looking to, it's something you can do while you're looking for maybe a full-time job, and then maybe you never even want to start your full-time job. Job growth below 1% in the U.S., almost 2% here in Texas. The stock market, which is basically, do I feel rich? And it's, if you're in the Magnificent Seven and you've been in the Magnificent Seven for the last couple of years, you're in really good shape. Now, one of the things I'm seeing though, and the Wall Street Journal did a really fascinating article about this. Each one of these, AI companies are investing in the other one and buying chips from the other one. And they've said, like, if something like a .com bust sort of a thing happens, at this point, they're already in a position where they're almost, what's called too big to fail. I don't know if you guys remember that term from the 2008 financial crisis. It's like, hey, we can't let, AIG go down. We can't let Fannie Freddie go down. We can't let, some of these, important companies that are employing a lot of people and or where people place a lot of bets in the banks. So, is it Lehman Brothers, had to get absorbed, and they didn't even get absorbed for what their real estate was worth. If you guys saw The Big Short, you got to see some of that conversation too. Kind of interesting. But one of the things that we're seeing is like the GDP. About half of the GDP, so our growth, our output in the economy, is based on what's happening in AI. And one tricky thing that some of these AI companies are doing is they're taking these expenses off of their balance sheets. And it's almost like they're hiding them in some, like, almost like they're hiding them, so you can't really see what the true numbers are. And we'll see how some of these accounting tricks continue to work out as well. But the market is a record market this year, higher than it's ever been. We're a solid point in the business growth cycle. Housing affordability, we're hoping that as Fed Chairman Powell leaves the building in March of 2026, that the new Fed Chairman will lower the Fed funds rate. Now, the Fed funds rate is not 100% correlated to the mortgage rate. It's more based on that 10-year Treasury, and it's been less correlated lately. Even with some of the Fed funds rate reductions that we've had, we have actually seen in some cases mortgage rates jump up because I think they thought it was going to be a half-point decrease instead of a quarter-point decrease. So it's been a little frustrating. But interest rates are, and I have interest rates in red. It should truly be green or orange, because the 40-year average for interest rates is about 7%, right? And we're crying, whining, complaining, over 7%, but the prices have also gone up at a much faster rate, which is a compounding effect. And let's see, the housing supply. So we always look at not just the demand side, but we also look at the supply side. The number of active listings, they are, for most of the major markets, except for San Antonio. San Antonio is the first market to cross that 6 months of inventory threshold. All the other markets are holding right below that. But the number, the months of inventory is starting to grow. Right now, Texas is 5.5. Houston and Dallas are kind of pulling down the curve. Austin and San Antonio are pulling up the curve to get closer to that 5.5 number. So we do have more active listings on housing permits. So what the builders are building in 2006, 7, 8, they way overbuilt, and it took us a long time to go through all of that inventory. Right now, they're watching their numbers. They're all of the speculative builds that were made in 2006, 7, and 8. They don't do that anymore. They're building more based on a contract as opposed to a we build it, they will come sort of a type of a scenario. So that is holding strong. In fact, probably one of the most interesting meetings that I went to was held by Angelo Economics. Like, the guy's name is Angelo is kind of a funny name like that. I can't remember which one came first. But I remember, like, in 2015, he said, we are going to be in a housing shortage. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. We're still working through all of the housing market, properties. Like, this is ridiculous. In 2016 and 2017, he said it again. And what did we have in 2020? And we were running, in the 3 to 4 months of inventory range in 2019. I think probably closer to 4, right? But then when everyone said, like, we went in, we didn't have the housing. And that's one of the reasons why we saw those prices go up, partially because now they're much more affordable because, you manipulate the terms, that's a game changer, right? So, and the terms going from, 5-6% range to 2-3% range, that's a game changer. So one of the things that Trump has proposed is the 50-year mortgage. Have you seen any mortgage brokers that are originating anything like that? No. I talked to, like, the Wells Fargo, like, head of mortgages department. They're like, no, that's a great talking point. It's like probably make them super popular, but it's not, people aren't really offering it. But I did the math on it. So to go from 30-year to 50-year on a $300,000 loan is like taking a 1% decrease in your mortgage. So going from a 6% interest rate to a 5% interest rate, which on a $300,000 mortgage, which I know we don't have any of those houses here in Austin, but you can get, $300,000 mortgage, that's about $200 a month. All right. On a $600,000 mortgage, that's about $400, which is that $4,800, about $5,000 a year in savings. That my employee got recently as well. So it does make a difference, but I don't know if even 50 years is enough for it to really make a difference. The other thing that's so fascinating that he brought up is we're going to make your mortgages movable. I don't know if you heard that, but it's basically like, you guys heard about, yeah. So take the 3% mortgage that you have on that house that you grew out of, that you want to move, because you got a new job and whatever, and then just move it with you to the new house. I have no idea how a bank is going to make that magic happen without like running afoul of every single contract, because the collateral is moving. And I mean, I could just, if I'm a bank, I'm thinking, okay, so I let this nice, young couple here move their mortgage, and then all of a sudden they don't pay for it. And then they say what? The mortgage is invalid. My mortgage was on this other house. It's not on this house. This is an invalid mortgage. I'm not going to pay it. Do you think that's going to happen? I guarantee there's going to be some fights over it for sure. Now, do I think they're going to get away with it? I don't. But do I think that they're going to use that to fight to stay in the house another 6, 12 months? I mean, like, people do crazy things, when life changes. So something interesting that I've got my finger on the pulse watching to see how that looks for us. Construction labor growth. We're deporting everyone. And unfortunately, that's going to have a big impact on our ability to build houses. And because we're all told, go to school, get your education, get a good job. And now some of those white collar jobs, it's better to be a blue collar job because you can make more and you can make, in some cases, faster. So, and then I was listening to an AI podcast today, and they were talking about some of those entry level jobs that are going away. And it's like, it's not like, so it's not, I've kind of thought like, oh, well, it's not white collar, it's not blue collar, it's now like metal collar. So don't go into a field where it's meaning a machine, right, is gonna potentially take your job. I told my husband about 2 years ago, honey, I'm un-AIable. They'll never catch me. And he's like, why do you think you're going to, beat AI? It's like, I'm like the Coke freestyle machine of real estate investing. Like, I'm not a one trick pony. Like Phil talked about all the different strategies that we use. And sometimes we go into a deal thinking it's going to be strategy A, and then we have to downshift into strategy B or some type of a combo strategy, right? So, and then, in the world of real estate, I do worry about realtors. And realtors gotten punched in the face, about a year ago with the NAR lawsuit, right? So, but I don't worry as much about real estate investors because these are, I would say, maybe more complex deals. And they're in the, realtors operate in the 80%. As real estate investors, we operate in the 20%, just on the outside. So what that means to me is on the realtor side, AI can get its reps in, right? AI can get its reps in. On what we do on the creative investor side, they're going to have a harder time getting their reps in, and there's not even as much information about, that out there. Now, I don't think it's right because and I know as a realtor that real estate is very complex. It's like, if you ask ChatGPT, hey, I've got a house, what forms do I need to use for it? They're probably going to miss a couple of forms, right? They're probably going to miss a few things. And it's going to kind of be like, if you ever, it's like sometimes what I find is the internet knows everything. But the internet has a fair amount of ridiculous just kind of sprinkled in. You just don't know where it is. So it's like, like I'm going to go to the ChatGPT and say, hey, I need to know how to make a souffle. And if they tell you to put the dry ingredients accidentally up front with the wet ingredients, or they're missing an ingredient, how good is your souffle going to be? It's not. It's going to be terrible. So if you're missing a form, so let's say like, the house was built before 1978, or the house had an HOA, or the house had a septic system, or the house had a propane tank, or the house was in a PUD district, which is the new thing that that they're doing now. It's like, are they going to get all that? Well, I think they're going to make some big mistakes. And that's why I think realtors are going to, we're going to have to fight for it, but I think realtors are going to make make through because there are just too many little things that are more kind of tribal knowledge-y as opposed to like, oh, just as these few steps that you repeat over and over and over again. So I think they'll always need some folks with that level of tribal knowledge. Housing demand. So again, basic economics, prices are a function of supply and demand. So I see a lot of people just look at the demand side, get a little FOMO, jump in, and sometimes overpay for something. Because especially when they're not looking at the supply side as well. So they're not looking at the supply side, it's like, now I'll share with you like Airbnb. So there's also a hashtag for Airbnb bust. So over the last 5 years, everyone's got like, and even Airbnb and HomeAway, like the number of nights rented is like this. That is true. But the supply side, I'm out of hands. The supply has gone up like this. This right here. This is not a character. This is called all of your profit. So what are you seeing on the MLS? I'm seeing a lot of properties that are listing fully furnished, Airbnb booked out. Yeah, ready to make your own Airbnb disaster, right? So the only reason why they're selling their Airbnb is because their Airbnb stopped working, right? Stopped getting the money that they were expecting. So you have to look at both sides of the equation. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in a scenario where you're not looking what's happening. And there's this, there's a site, for the realtors, we have it for the MLS. We know what's going on. For Airbnb, there's a site called AirDNA. So they have all of the stats, so you can see not just the demand side, but also the supply side. So on the demand side, we are seeing, it's kind of the yellow. It's basically up, flat, some months up, some months flat, but year to date up 1.7%, which I'd say is pretty strong. That's for the entire state of Texas. Pending sales, kind of yellow. Again, feels pretty flat, right? And then in migration, we still do have more people moving here to Texas than we have leaving Texas. And I say that is really, really true for the DFW market. They're making their own Wall Street there. They're calling it Y'all Street, which I think is so cool. I'm Texas all the way through, right? So I think that's great. So we are seeing more businesses move here all the time. We do have some wild cards, interest rate decreases, the timing of them and how that's going to, impact sales. I know it's starting to impact refinances already. Tax law changes. So they did kick through and sign the big, beautiful bill. So for those of you guys with rental property or investing in multifamily syndications, you get that bonus depreciation that you get to write off from your adjusted gross income, which is a really great way to be able to save on taxes. We got multiple wars going on. They are at ceasefires. But the ceasefires are hanging on by like a cat's toenail, like it's barely in a tornado. It feels like it's barely hanging on. I know they're very much pushing to end some of these very tragic and sad wars that are going on right now. Tariffs, they're having some impact, right? We looked at the inflation rate last month. It was 3%. The Fed Chairman Powell, the directive is to have it below 2. We haven't really been able to get much below 2.5. And we've kind of felt like the new normal is going to be about that 3% range. A lot of businesses pulled in many of their purchases into Q1 as some of these tariff announcements were made, but at some point they're going to be running out of those supplies, if not already. So the tariff impact may be kind of a slow build. Immigration. So I just want to keep all the people who want to make this country great. I want to get it rid of the people who want to murderous. So that's it. I don't know if we could kind of do that at the border, but we need more people to help build housing for us. They say like we need cheaper housing. Well, if you're exporting all the people that are building houses, what do you think is going to happen with housing prices, development costs? They're going to go up, right? It's just math. And then inflation, we're watching that, and then the effects of AI on all of us. So it'll be kind of interesting. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about. Does anybody have kids in the room? Like, how old are your kids? 24 and 12. So you may have seen the movie WALL-E. Okay. So they, so kind of pulling it together with like this universal basic income. So you might remember, some of the people were that like they were on a cruise ship in the sky, and they were on scooters and they just scoot around. They're big folks and always eating, drinking, right? It's like couldn't even like stand on their own, basically wearing a onesie, like a diaper. Like this is what it's going to be like if the government takes care of you. It's going to be a little bit WALL-E, dystopian kind of a thing. So it's going to be interesting to watch that one and how that plays out for us in the world. But I think what I don't want to, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I will tell you guys this quote from Napoleon that he said 250 years ago, which is just as valid today as it was 250 years ago. And it is this: the genius is the man who can do just the average thing when everyone else around them are losing their minds. Think about that. When we have uncertainty, it's really easy to just to stop doing anything, put your head in the sand, and just like, I'll put that off, right? But if you could just do the average thing, you're going to be 10 times better off than the person who's not doing anything, right? So I thought that was a great quote, and I think it applies, today as well as way back then. All right, so let's jump into the forecast for the rest of 2026. I think we're at the bottom of the cycle, but I think we could kind of bump around the bottom for a while. We're at a point where we're seeing some compression, year-over-year compression on a closer number in terms of days on market. We're seeing some compression in terms of the growth, in terms of months of inventory. We're seeing some compression in terms of the growth in the number of additional listings. So once you start seeing compression on those, is you kind of it starts to go like this, and you start to see it turn around. Typical market cycle, 3 to 5 years up, 1 to 3 years down. It always feels like it takes the escalator up, but the elevator down. It goes down at twice the rate that it goes up. And then I think in the last market cycle, we were flat for a long time. I wouldn't be surprised if we went through another flat stage where it's just kind of stagnant growth. We do have some interest rate decreases forecasted for 2026. I think anything in the below 5.5, we're back in business, in terms of sales. But I think 6 which is about where we're at right now, it's just not moving the market. It's got to be below 5.5 to even get that movement going. I think sales will flatten. Right now they're already flat, but they'll start to rebound really as interest rates start to decrease. Right now, sales are going to be up year over year over 2024, about 1 to 2%. If we see anything below a 5.5% interest rate for most of 2026, and I'm being conservative when I say 2 to 3%, it could be 3 to 5. For prices, prices are flat, up, about 1% versus where we were in 2024. And I think they'll be up again in that. And I think this is conservative, 2, maybe 3, maybe 4% in 2025. But we've got to see those interest rates start to come down. And that's just a wait and see. So there are a lot of, the Fed has the imperative of low inflation and not drive the economy into the ditch. So, and that is kind of a hard thing to juggle. And I think he's been doing pretty well so far, but we just need to continue to look to see what's next.